And we are live. All right. Well, thank you for joining us or watching this recording. This is Paul Hill. I'm an E-Extension Fellow studying the Maker Movement with Utah State University, and I'm joined by Dave Francis, a Utah 4-H science specialist with Utah State University, my colleague. And we have Jerry Thomas from The Ohio State University, and he's just joined us. So I just want to thank you both for joining me for just a quick half-hour meeting. I want to do some Q&A about how extension can help grow the maker movement in cities and in our communities. And so just thanks. And then real quick, do you want to just introduce yourself, kind of maybe tell us about your roles and how you're involved in the maker movement?
Yeah. So I'm Dave Francis. I also work for Utah State University, and the maker movement for us started about 2011 with a pilot, getting the ball rolling with some maker movement and say maker movement in a museum setting, maker movement in very small community settings to allow for the maker movement to kind of do a proof of concept with 4-H to see if it really works for us. And then from there it's grown and leaps and bounds, and we've helped Cache County have one of our biggest maker spaces in the state right now. And our local agent there, Scott Williams, runs an amazing maker program, but we have fledgling maker sites in multiple locations across the state.
Thanks, Dave. Hey, Jerry.
Hey, sorry, I didn't see your email until a minute or so ago for the link. Sorry. I'm at Ohio State. I'm happy to join you guys and learn more from you. I think there's huge potential from we have a really huge untapped potential related to the maker type stuff, and we need to figure out how to communicate that across program areas. Paul and I were on an earlier call today, Dave, and it's good to meet you. I'm happy to meet you. Thank you.
Thanks, Jerry.
We just somehow need to figure out how it's. In a way, it's a very abstract topic, and so how do you communicate that? Because we're already doing it in so many ways in so many areas.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Jerry. So one thing I want to talk about is this broadcast is really in reference to the article "Cities Drive the Maker Movement." It's a TechCrunch article. And which was about, I'll show it right here, the National League of Cities. They just produced how cities can grow the maker movement. And it's about a 21-page report. And I thought, a lot of time I've spent on this fellowship this year has focused on how 4-H can join the maker movement. I presented at the National Association of 4-H Agents. And we've seen a lot of growth in the maker movement through 4-H because we've seen that, hey, these are things, making is something we've already been doing. In fact, we've been doing this since 1902, and we have a really great a base of knowledge in doing that. But we also have a base of knowledge in extension, and so I want to kind of move the direction of what I've been talking about in 4-H specifically, and talk about how extension as a whole, community development leaders and just extension professionals in their communities can help grow the maker movement. And this article and this report do an excellent job at really giving us some guidance to do so. And so one of the things it said is that makers in our communities, they're helping lead us towards a more unique and customized future. And that's one thing I wanted to ask Jerry is what have you seen? How are makers actually leading us into a unique, customized future?
Sorry, I had to unmute. I think they are. I just think we're disconnected from them. And I think there's people out there who are experimenting, who are doing things like you and David. Where they're testing, they're playing with things. When I look at the maker movement and go to the maker fair in Detroit, I see people doing all kinds of things I would never even think about. things about studies with climate, things about just different ways of working differently. And so I don't have a very definitive answer for you, other than there's a lot of people in this space, and we're not there completely yet.
Yeah. One thing that the article talks about is bringing back local industry into cities where it's left, where manufacturing has left. And one thing I wanted to ask Dave is what have you seen? How I guess how have you seen local industries, at least in Utah or in your readings? Have you seen cities bring back local industry and strengthen their workforce?
Well, that's been an interesting phenomenon with the maker movement. When you find out who the allies are of maker movement, it's everything from manufacturing to high tech to more artisan type people, and they're all coming together for their own interests. But that manufacturing side has come with the maker movement to say what they like is maker spaces are incubators for innovation. And Extension has a long history of developing business incubators in the sense of let's provide a community kitchen that's a certified kitchen for people that have been making breads or muffins or jams in their home to expand their operation so they can expand their reach. Maker spaces do the same thing for people that need access to laser cutters, to other large tools that they can't afford on their own. And so by allowing that crowdsourcing of the tools in city spaces, prototypes can be developed faster and small businesses can form based on that to manufacture. And the other thing that's exciting about maker movement and manufacturing is increasingly, especially our Gen Yers, they want a custom, one-of-a-kind piece. This makerspace allows for you to say, as a manufacturer, what is it that you want to make? And let me make that for you that's one of the kind, the unique piece that you like. And that's what it does, and that's the good news about that is that's a price point that's a little bit higher that allows for manufacturers to find their niche market versus mass production out of developing nations like China or other places where fabric and clothing and these places are mass produced. That customability really has a niche market that we can grow and through the use of maker spaces.
Yeah.
What is your background, Dave?
My background, I actually have a natural resource environmental education background and then extension. But currently, I deal with 4-H science is what I deal with.
Because that right there is where, Paul, I think NACDEP needs to be. I mean, that's really a whole area of really, we have a person here. I need to connect you with her, Myra Moss, who in Ohio, because she does entrepreneurship, and she's really big in rural areas. And how do we do entrepreneurship? And what David just described fits exactly within where her community development thing is at.
Yeah, for instance, like USU has it, but also in Nebraska they have a whole entrepreneurship program that's based around foods, and it's pretty neat. I mean, they help you, from just the beginning in getting it into stores and on the shelf. And so, but we need to do that. We need to be able to be accessible for more than just food and ag products. It's interesting because if you look at kind of the timeline in this, how cities can grow the maker movement article, I mean, it goes back to 2005 with the launch of Etsy. And then goes into, okay, now we have Kickstarter in 2009, and then you've got that same year MakerBot coming on board, and being able to see these opportunities to not only sell you can sell your products, your homemade crafts, but now you have new opportunities you've seen the price of prototyping come down, and then being able to crowdsource the products that the projects that you want to sell, and then you see Square that came on board in 2009, being able to take payments, and just really the Raspberry Pi. I mean, we just saw the release of the Raspberry Pi 3, which is a $35 computer, but on Adafruit right now, the Raspberry Pi Zero, which is a $5 computer, which is used in many maker projects. And so It's kind of neat to see really these people come together in maker spaces. But one thing that the article talks about is really the untapped skills and knowledge that comes from when a makerspace comes to town, or when people discover the maker movement and the potential to that it has to really become part of the creative economy of a city. And so, Dave, one thing I wanted to ask you is really kind of, could you share what Utah 4-H is doing in serving those extraction communities and planning to harness the untapped skills and knowledge by exposing youth and families to the maker movement through the SciFar grants?
Yeah, we just recently, and our fingers are crossed, we clicked submit on our SciFar grant on Monday. And what we found is we had some economically disadvantaged counties right now because they were riding high with the oil prices, and when the oil boom was going, industry was going, lots of new businesses were coming to town. Unfortunately now, with the price of oil where it's at and other fossil fuels, their economies are tanking. And there's a lot of social issues that are associated now that we're seeing a spike in domestic abuse going up. We're seeing a lot of increased drug use because people are not doing well in these environments because their economy has tanked. So, and we know it's cyclical. These regions have a boom and bust cycle based on oil prices. And so our agents that have been there for 20, 30 years can say, yes, we could have predicted this happening in our communities. So to avoid that boom and bust cycle, what we're trying to do is with this next generation of kids, how do we introduce the maker movement to say there is not large industry in your community beyond the extractive of oil or iron or coal? How can we help you create your own future, make your own future through the maker movement so that you begin to chart your own course, and you may not have to leave town. Some of the products I buy on Etsy are from very small communities around the nation, but it's because they have that Etsy store that I found, and I enjoy using the product for various, a lot of our 4-H projects for maker camps come from Etsy. Then they're making a living, or at least supplementing their income with their maker projects. So that's why I think it's an opportunity, and this is same thing with some of our smaller communities, is if you're in an area that relies heavily on tourism or other episodic and not a lot of jobs, maker movement can help you kind of provide your own employment if you want to stay in that region.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. Can you tell everyone what SciFar stands for?
Yeah, that's the Children, Youth, Families at Risk grant program. It's part of the USDA.
Thanks. Yeah, I really like what you said. In the book Lynchpin by Seth Godin, he says that really, he talks about the history of manufacturing, and nowadays a laptop and internet connection, that's the new factory. That's your access to having your own Etsy store and making your own things. And so I really see that as I hope that grant goes through, because I really see with what we've done with the maker movement so far, I really see us with our network being able to help these communities with their prototypes and getting products that they can sell that will help families in their income and hopefully reduce some of these problems that they're seeing. One thing in the report by the National League of Cities was they said there's so much untapped and wonderful, great potential of the maker movement, and they said this was a quote. This really this stuck with me. They said coordination between the government, the private sector, and the community has shown to be effective, and getting cities involved. And I really see this is the space that Extension's working in right now. I was this morning, for example, today, this morning I was on the phone with my county commissioner. I visited with some 4-H volunteers that are actively involved in the tech community in my city, and then I met with members from this morning from this city, and so and then there's me and Extension, and so we're all here at the table, and I see that this is a great opportunity, because where we've seen the most benefit has been in some of these case studies, and one of them, kind of, I guess you could say the best practices, and so far of what we have is really working to get STEM education into communities, and so that was one way. But really, you need a place to do that, and extension offices aren't always very big. But they gave the example of the Chattanooga Public Library. They transformed the fourth floor of a rundown library, into a 12,000 square foot makerspace, getting the STEM funding to really build this makerspace. But then they opened it up to adults, and so it's not just a 4-H center or a STEM center, but it's a kind of an example of a win-win situation where the public library, they experience increased foot traffic, and local makers now have a place to work at an extremely low cost. And then there's it's our opportunity to work with the public to get this infrastructure. But in the city of Eugene, Oregon, they recently sold an unused building for $1. Which will be renovated and converted into a co-working space, incubator, and a fabrication shop. And then also in Madison, Wisconsin, the city invested $1.5 million to expand kind of this starting block of this facility. The name of it was Starting Block, where makers can learn to become entrepreneurs. Local youth, they can access programs in electronics and art and sewing, metalworking, and apps and gaming. And so how have you seen, Dave, you want to kind of describe the investment Utah's made in the maker movement?
Yeah, and I think that, first off, the good news about Extension is, for over 100 years, we have played the role of community organizer, whether it's bringing agricultural producers together to help them form co-ops. Some of our family consumer science people have dealt with large volume grocery purchasing co-ops. So that's our natural space for us to be as community organizers, to bring the community together and help leverage a mission. So in Utah, what we've invested in is a kind of a myriad of options for maker movement. Our cash makers up here in Logan, where I'm at today, they started small, and then they got a donated space from the Chamber of Commerce in the basement, and it was covered in graffiti and kind of sketchy, and the kids, they gutted it, they painted it, they had new shelves, they got some surplus computers and a few Lego kits. They started going, added laser cutter. As that program grew, we were able to secure additional funds and put that into a rented space just off town here, and it's hopping with kids. And what's exciting is new volunteers are coming in. We have a sign manufacturer company that just bought out by Samsung. They're saying, hey, we have all these LEDs that came back on a bad product that we can't use, but they're still functional. Boom, they end up in the makerspace, and there's this two-way street of them seeing kids that are doing this kind of stuff with LED work are going to be our future employees at this sign company that we have. Other places have opted to invest in trailers, where they have a makerspace that includes some of the equipment that's on board the trailer, laser cutters, 3D printers. The trailer carries an onboard generator with them, so they can plug in anywhere to get the power they need, and the trailer spills out into a space. They have tables and whatnot to put on maker workshops. Other spaces are kind of like what Paul has, which I call the pop-up makerspace, where it's a multi-function space in a county office, but when it's time to do maker, we pull the stuff out of the closets, we set up some maker spaces, and it goes away. Some of our smaller communities have done that in the community building next door to the county office, because the county office has very limited space. So they can say, if you'll give us some shelving to store some of this stuff, whenever we do a maker event, we just pull everything out, put the tables out, and there may have been a community celebration there the day before. It becomes and morphs into a maker space for that time frame. So there's lots of variable ways to invest in maker spaces to get your community invested in it.
Jerry, thanks, Dave. What have you seen? I know I'm aware of some maker spaces in Ohio. I haven't visited them, but what has local cities done to help? What is their contribution to these maker spaces? Are they kind of independent, or what do you know about them in Ohio?
I think they're running parallel to a lot of things that are happening. And Dave and Paul, you guys in Utah, you're far ahead of anything that we have here, by far, and anywhere else in the country that I know of. In the description that Dave just gave, as far as Paul, different things, and so I don't think there's any coordination here in Ohio that I'm aware of, and I'm a step removed between the spaces and stuff like economic development departments, Chamber of Commerce's, other groups that should be part of it. I really enjoyed it. It's kind of like the Maker Manifesto when I read that book. But Paul, your description is, and Dave, is just, we really have a creating economy. I don't know if it's a making economy or a creating economy or what we want to call it, but how to translate that opportunity. Because I think for, Ohio, we have 88 counties in Ohio. They're small counties compared to where you're at. About a third of them are Appalachian counties, and so they're very rural. We have all kinds of opportunities in this maker thing and with entrepreneurship for people to do startups, to do their own thing, to make money on the side as they're working. So I don't have an answer, Paul. I don't have an answer for you. Sorry, I'm doing more commentary than answering.
Oh, no worries.
We're definitely behind you guys. You guys are really doing some neat stuff.
Well, I know that Mark Light has, is that a makerspace there, the Spark Lab?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he has an open house on Thursday. So.
And that's at the extension office?
Yes. It actually doubled the size of their office about approximately, and it gave a reason for people to come to their office. So he has an open house on Thursday with different people coming.
And was that funding through e-extension?
Yes, partially. It was one of the innovation grants. It was the only innovation grant that required a local contribution. So Keith Smith from Ohio State at the time, our director, had to put money into it. It was like maybe $10,000 or so.
Well, excellent. I want to note that nationally, 26% of cities currently have maker spaces, and 13% have hosted a maker fair. And so, just from a few years ago, you can, in this report, you can see the tools are there. The cities are getting on board, and really the question is, where's extension? And so if you're viewing this, you're an extension professional, this is our opportunity to get involved and to bring people together to be these community organizers and leaders. I think we can play a critical role in making extension more relevant in the 21st century, but also serving our communities and building the local economies. And I think those are the things that city leaders see as very attractive, and where they want to make their public investments. And so I think if you're not involved in the maker movement, get online, get with me, and I can certainly help you get connected to the makers in your community, and look for ways that you can work with Extension to really grow this this community and really see innovation and industry grow. And so really cities are where makers are making making things happen, and it's and I think we can see a lot of prosperity that's already happened and that's coming our way. And so hopefully I'll see you in the Bay Area Maker Fair this May. Are you going, Dave?
I am going. Yes.
Awesome. I think you were planning to go too, Jerry, right?
Not the Bay Area. I'll be in Detroit, probably.
Detroit, okay.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one, actually. So, Paul, a couple items real quick to follow up on what Jerry said before we end is, one, he mentioned the Appalachia region, and as we worked with West Virginia, we found the same thing, that too many times in Maker Movement we think we jump to the apps, we jump to the 3D printing, but these regions, like Appalachia, some of our more western rural communities, have a heritage arts that is being lost, and Maker Movement is a way to tap into those heritage arts and bring them back and make them relevant and make them an economies to sell to other people and capture that. And that's what I love about the maker statement in the front of the latest Youth Makerspace Playbook, is we learn from the past, we celebrate those arts as well as look to the future. And that second thing about the open house, I can't emphasize enough, makerspaces need to share with the community. It can't just be a basement operation. Cash Makers has started Saturday workshops where they encourage the community to come out, learn a skill, and then share a skill. And so that's an opportunity at the museum I work with at Thanksgiving Point. Every Saturday they have open space in the Maker Lab for families. They have a designated project, and if you can make the project, and if you want to keep it, you just pay a small fee for the materials. That's been huge to get more eyeballs seeing what this Maker program is all about, and that's what's kind of exciting about that. So that is a great way as extension offices become more digital. People are finding their information online. Maker is a reason to bring people to the library, to bring people to the extension office, because they need to actually do that and learn from each other. So that's a couple of comments that I kind of want to pick up off of what Jerry had said earlier.
That helps me. That actually, Dave, helps me quite a bit.
Thank you, Dave. Yeah, that's great. We were talking earlier, Jerry and I, and really, I see a vision, for extension in the maker movement is every extension office a makerspace. And I really think that they can get information online. They don't need to get our fact sheets from the office. They don't need to make that trip, but they do to learn skills. They can do that at a makerspace, and I think that's where we should be. So that's a lot to work towards. But anyway, I just appreciate both your time. I know that we all have to run, so I'm glad we could make the time and connect today. And I just want to thank everyone for joining us and for watching the video.
Thank you,
want to say farewell, and we'll see you on the next one. If you would like more information, go to EXT edtechs edtechs.org/makers. That's extedtechs.org/makers, and that's where I keep all my information for this maker fellowship, where you can get resources on maker spaces, suppliers where you can get for different projects that you need. So thanks for joining me, and you can always send me a tweet at 4HPro is my handle, and would love to hear from you. So have a great day and take care.
Thanks,
Paul.